Hi everyone, checking in from Africa. We are in the Thorny Bush Reserve right now on safari, and I just wanted to tell you about finishing up The Diary of a Young Girl and Frank's Diary. I finished it just as we were flying out of Amsterdam, and the day after we had visited Anne Frank House, and it was a really incredible read. I didn't remember a lot of it from obviously from reading it when I was 13, and there was it was really an interesting combination of tedious teenager frustrations with living with a bunch of adults very tightly packed into a small area, and observations on the war, and her hopes and dreams for becoming an adult. And so that was probably the part that was the most difficult to hear, because I knew that, as everyone knows, that she never got to be an adult. She never got to enjoy that life. So yeah, that was hard. It was hard whenever she talked about the future to realize that she was, you know, not going to be able to live that life that she was planning. And so when she was having her little small romance with Peter, the teenage boy who was staying with them, I was so glad that she took that pleasure for herself, because everything that came after that was really quite tragic and difficult and sad for her. So yeah, I'm glad I reread it. I don't think I would reread it again. I think it fit very well, and the time and place of us going to Amsterdam and visiting the Anne Frank house, which is incredible, by the way. And obviously I can't put in any footage of that because no cameras are allowed in there for obvious reasons. But if you are ever traveling to Amsterdam, please do take the time to do the booking, because it's a beautifully rendered experience. It's very moving and very well crafted as a museum experience. So yeah, that is my check-in for The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Hey everyone. So I'm still in South Africa. We're in Johannesburg. We leave tomorrow night. I just wanted to catch you up on my reading. I did finish The Soul of a Woman by Isabel Allende. I can't say it exactly the way they say it in Spanish. So I enjoyed listening to it. I think that Isabel Allende's recollections of her youth and everything really interesting, and of her life. The only problem I had with this memoir, I would call it, is that it's not very cohesive. I would have preferred, I think, if she would have divided up the topics into a specific chapters, because it's just very rambly. So you cover a lot of different topics. You cover, like, there's quotes, there's poems that she includes. So I think maybe if I would have been reading this in the physical form, that maybe it would have made more sense. Like, it would have had a bit more cohesion, because listening to it without any kind of division between the sections became a bit difficult, because you don't really know when something's ending and something else is beginning. So I don't know if that's a criticism of that audiobook. Perhaps they could have done that better in the editing or something like that, or put some music or something to divide it up. Or if that's just the nature of this book. I believe she wrote this during COVID, or like in COVID time. So you get this sense that she's processing COVID. Not a lot. She doesn't talk about it very much, but she does mention it. She talks about her family, losing her daughter, which she wrote a whole other book about. The loves of her life, writing, like what it was like to be a woman Chilean writer in her generation, the support that she got from other people in her career, the way her books have been perceived, her routine, and what she does every day for writing, her idiosyncrasies, her preferences, all of that is kind of in there. So it's just kind of everything in the kitchen sink, and I think there's parts of that that are really interesting and are really compelling, and then there's just a little bit of a lack of cohesion with some of the thoughts. So you'll kind of jump from her talking about her stepfather to her discussing how she met her second husband or something like that. And there's just, to me, I think I would have preferred a bit more organization in the overall delivery. So overall, I think I definitely will try reading one of her novels. Not sure if I'll read any more of her nonfiction. Maybe the one about her daughter, because she wrote a specific memoir just about that. But I think I would try it in physical format and not audio if I did read her nonfiction again. I doubt that this problem is there in her fiction. Yeah, so that is my impression of The Soul of a Woman by Isabel Allende. Hey everyone, so while in Africa, I'm now home, I finished Black Lion, Alive in the Wilderness by Sicelo Mbatha with Bridget Pitt. And this was such a pleasure to read. This, I think, is a very unique story. I'm actually going to do a full review on this, so I'm not going to go into it in super detail here, but I've never read a memoir / biography quite like this one. It's written with a deep connection and spiritual passion for nature. It is, I think Cicelo's perspective and life are very unique and important to have in the world, because he's sharing his path and his journey towards becoming a ranger who guides people through wilderness tours in Africa, and they are on foot. So they're not in a jeep driving around and looking at the animals the way a lot of people view game in South Africa. Rather, these are nature trails where people backpack. And so it's also about his life, being a rural Zulu man, and his struggles trying to figure out his path when he does not have a lot of money to go to university to get like the qualifications that a lot of white South Africans or other people would be able to afford. So it's just got so much in here. It also has beautiful descriptions of nature, and a beautiful connection to his Zulu spirituality and culture that infuses everything that he does. So I would highly recommend this if you love nature writing, and if you want to learn about Black South African perspectives on nature and culture and growing up and the struggles, but also the triumphs of a person who is following their own path and is really truly connected to an authentic nature experience. So highly recommend this one. Hey everyone, so my last finish of March is In the Field, a novel by Claire Tacon. I don't know, is it Tacon? I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. So this was part of my Reading Across Canada 2023 list, and I have mixed feelings about it, actually. I think overall I enjoyed it. It is a very layered story, and there's a lot of themes going on in it, and I think a lot of the themes are really interesting and valid. We have our main character Ellie, who grew up in small town Nova Scotia and always wanted to get out. right? So I think there's different contingencies. There's different types of people. There's some people who love their small towns and want to stay, and then there's the people who grew up in a small town and want to leave. And I was one of the people who wanted to leave my small town, and and that's one of the themes in here, where you have this kind of contrast between the people who stayed and the people who left. And what does that say about you if you left? And can you return? Can you go back and become that person that you would have been if you wouldn't have left? The sense of family and care that happens in a small town, but also the lack of privacy, the lack of anonymity in a small town. So there's that's one of the themes. There's also an underlying theme of a woman and man both in the same career path. So the professor tracked at universities in the sciences, and one partner who has a very successful career and is, you know, fulfilling the kind of career that is expected. And then the woman who has her children and doesn't get tenure tracked and is trying to do her research, but she can't do her research. And so that's another theme in here, which I appreciated. There's also care of an elderly parent and trying to come to terms with them changing and their abilities to take care of themselves changing. There's also kind of regret and what ifs that go through the story. So Ellie is in this town. Her mother is ill, she thinks, but she doesn't know exactly what's going on with her mother. She hasn't been home for a long time. She has mixed race children, so her husband is black and she is white. So that's another theme that's happening in there. You have the kind of Toronto city life contrasted with the small town, internal racism stuff going on too. There is so there are some flashbacks in the story as well to when Ellie was a teenager and her relationship with Bernie, who was her best friend, but who also seemed to be carrying a flame for her, which was never really acknowledged. And then Ellie kind of gets embroiled in his relationship that he has currently when she returns for the summer. So I thought that the story was very layered. It had some interesting points to it. Ellie is a complicated character. She's not perfect. She makes mistakes. She does things wrong, and that's true to life. People are not perfect, and they do things wrong. And so, overall, I thought it was a great depiction of kind of that small town life. It also references specific places in Nova Scotia. So if you've been there, or you could look up these places on the map and kind of get a sense of part of what it's like to live there. But I think it also has a universal feel to it, this novel. So you could really relate it to any small town, I think, in North America. It has that same sense of the the small town life versus the city life. So I think that's depicted pretty well. But I think what it lacked for me is just a real connection, emotional connection to it. And I don't know what the author could have done to make me more emotionally attached to the story. I think it was on some levels, an intellectual story, but I think it was quite well written. So maybe a bit too much drama for me in some places, because I don't really necessarily enjoy a lot of drama in my stories. But I think in a lot of cases, for the scenarios that she was exploring, the drum was fairly realistic. So yeah, so I enjoyed this overall, I think, and I'm glad I read it. I think it relates quite interestingly to my Newfoundland read in terms of some of the explorations of the people and who lived in Nova Scotia. And yeah, that is all my reading for March. I will be back again soon with another video. Thank you so much for watching.